Alright, since Canto 8 is finished, let's get back to what I was doing for a while now. The Abnormality Room. And who boy do we have some abnormalities to talk about. In which case, it is the three birds. Punishing Bird, Big Bird, and Judgement Bird, along with Apoc Bird. Now, to give some context as to why I'm doing those specific abnormalities, well, after the completion of Canto 8's Part 2, I gained a sudden inspiration, shall we say. An inspiration to talk about those birds in an Abnormality Room video. And what that inspiration is, you'll have to check out that Part 2 highlights video. It's right there. So, here we are, with Canto 8 finished and an inspiration to talk about them. So, if there's any way to better start a video about a few birds, we might as well give some context as to why they are so important in general, aka the Black Forest. There is not a whole lot we know about the Black Forest as a location, and the only thing we know is that it exists in the outskirts. Most of the knowledge that we do know of the Black Forest comes from the entries of the Apoc Bird, which essentially goes as follows. The Black Forest was warm and lush, populated by many creatures, and no, not people. Humans don't live in a forest, they live in a village nearby instead. A lot of these creatures are native, while some come from the outside. It was like populated. Amongst those native creatures, there are three birds that live there, and before they were known as the three birds we know, they were originally known as the small bird, the big bird, and the Loooooong bird, and all three of them wanted the forest to be safe, that everyone can have fun in it. That is, until a stranger came in one afternoon, a pioneer and a traveler. He was also nobody, and wanted to enter the forest, but the birds found him a bit suspicious, so the stranger, now angered, told him that soon a tragedy will fall before the forest. It will be tainted with misdeeds and evil, and that there will be constant conflict. The tragedies will only stop when a terrible beast appears and devours everything. The sun and moon will shine upon the forest no longer. The forest will never go back to what it was before. The birds, worried about what the stranger has said, began to truly be the protectors of the Black Forest, since they loved the Black Forest more than anything. Big Bird, with his all-seeing eyes, can see far and wide, so that he would watch over the forest for intruders. The Loooooong bird kept the forest at peace with its scales, the scales that were fair and just, weighing any kind of sin. And Small Bird decided to be the punisher, to peck the evil with its beak. But all of the creatures that were under their protection had their own worries. But what if the beast shows up in the middle of the night, when the sky is dark and everyone is asleep? But what if the scale doesn't tip in either direction someday, but your beak is so small, no one will find it hurtful? With all these worries, the birds wanted to do something about them immediately. To ease these worries, Big Bird burned all of its feathers, making a lamp that won't run out. That way the forest will always be at peace, even at night. Loooooong bird made the scale to always tip to one side, so that it always gave a verdict. And Small Bird tore its mouth, so wide that any creature could be eaten in a single bite. After a while, no new creatures willingly entered the Black Forest, with many rumors going around that the Big Bird is always watching the creatures of the forest, there's no freedom, and the Loooooong bird's scale isn't fair at all, and that the Small Bird's punishment is so scary. The three birds, who heard all of these complaints, were a bit upset that everyone complains, and that no one would appreciate their effort of protecting the forest. Eventually, however, they realized that the forest is just too big and too vast. They alone couldn't protect the forest on their own. So, in order to mitigate that, they combined their powers and turned into one. And because of that, the forest fell to mayhem. All of the forest's residents were screaming and shouting until one said that it's the beast! A big scary monster lives in a black dusky forest! The massive bird turned to find it, but there was nothing, leaving the forest with nothing but three things. The Black Forest, the Beast, and the very dark night, fulfilling the prophecy that the stranger has said so long ago. Until Iron came in when the Apoc Bird was split apart back to the three birds and are then contained in their own cells. Now, it's unknown if they were split or not, but through Big Bird's story, Alcor came to pick it up and not Apoc Bird, so maybe they were split. But other than that afterthought, yeah, this is probably one of the coolest abnormality stories that I've covered so far, with a lot to unpack and wrap around. So let's do that. So firstly, I think that it's incredibly obvious that the tree birds, the black forest, etc. have a lot of correlation to the city and the head, right? The city is obviously meant to be the black forest as a whole, and the tree birds are the head, with Big Bird being the eyes, or the beholders, Punishing Bird being the claws, and Judgement Bird being the arbiters. Especially with Library Ruina having Bina, aka Garion, aka an arbiter, holding the tree birds as abnormalities for realization. Now, I want to go in further and understand the birds individually. Since we have gone through what they did for the Black Forest together, might as well go through them individually. It'll be short, but oh well. So, starting off with O-02-56 is a 10th level abnormality that anyone that has played Lobotomy Corporation at least once would be one of, if not the first abnormality that you would obtain, besides one sin of course. Now, originally the abnormality would be named Small Bird if you don't have it at observation level 2 or above, so that's cool. It's just a small bird, sitting on a branch. And not only it is small, but also quite confident when punishing the evil, guilty, and all sorts of irreverent people. It's adorable. Everyone else calls it cute, so what's the big deal with it? Well, it is its big mouth. A mouth big enough to kill anyone who has attacked it as vengeance. Hell, you know you're in trouble since it is red now. But if it's cool and normal, then it just pecks, and pecks, and pecks, until it goes back to its cell because it's bored. And when it's bored again in its cell, it'll just fly out and peck the person it deems evil. Yeah, so individually, it's not that special. It's an ordinary 10th abnormality that is not too special, but with the context of the tree birds, it's actually kinda special, with a representation of the claws, aka the head's private military, hunting down those that broke the city's taboos, such as cloning. Now, I would end it there, but there is something I need to mention, which is the last part of the Punishing Bird's observation logs, which says that the little bird left the forest it had been living in, and never went back. Now, I mentioned this because, well, why is this here? I mean, according to the Black Forest's tale, Punishing Bird, along with its two brethren, have combined to make Apocalypse Bird, so it, quote-unquote, leaving wouldn't really make sense now, would it? Anyways, let's move on to O-02-40 is a WoW level abnormality that would probably be amazing at hide and seek with its 47 eyes. And counting, according to the Ego Gear. Now, unlike Punishing Bird and Judgement Bird, Big Bird doesn't have a secondary alias. Big Bird is its name, nothing more. Now, why is that? I don't know. It wants to be honest with itself, so maybe. But if it did have a second alias, maybe it would be named the Seeker Bird, or something like that. Because Big Bird is the bird that looks around and protects the creatures from the beast. And that quote-unquote protection is not hiding the small creatures beneath its big and featherless body with the lantern brighten up the environment. No. Instead of all that, it eats their heads off with the logic of, if I kill the creatures first, then no one would be killed by the beast. Amazing, spectacular idea, Big Bird. But that caused a bunch of rumors about a beast who will bite their heads off in the dark forest from a village nearby. Now, when picking up the abnormality, it was reported that, yes, Big Bird exists, but the beast doesn't. So that's something. And we are then left off with how there are two types of abnormalities who see deaths. Those who understand perfectly well that the concept and meaning of death is and will attack our staff with the intent to kill, and those who are aware of the concept of death but attack without malicious intent. And how Big Bird belongs to neither, and sees death as salvation. If it just ripped off the head of a poor little girl who got lost in the forest, to it, there was no mistake, malice, or murder. It thinks it's just saved the girl from the beast, which is kind of sad if you think about it. There's even a whole comic about it. Now, one last thing. Big Bird not only represents something that innocently wants to protect someone from their point of view, it also represents the eye, who controls the beholders, who look all over the city with their all-seeing eyes. Now, out of the trio, they are probably the most mysterious ones, since unlike arbiters and claws, who are in the front lines, beholders are in the back lines, and just watch and do nothing, which is unlike Big Bird, which makes me wonder what other connections we can make between the two. But I don't want to make the video too long, so instead, you can probably tell me that by commenting me your thoughts below and subscribing to me. Thank you. Anyways, let's go over one last bird before that. 0-02-62 is another WoW level bird abnormality and is one of 2 abnormalities in Lobotomy Corporation that deals pale damage, along with our holy saint and angel White Knight, which if you don't know is damage to the soul, which makes sense if we consider what it does, which is to judge and execute. Originally known as lawn bird, this bird is quite tall, with its long legs, arms, and neck. It's also blind, by the way, which is ironic because it represents blind justice, so that's something. So before it turned and became the Judgement bird that it is now, lawn bird was originally an even-handed the fuck is that word? Justiciar? I don't fucking know. Its scales would never neglect the weight of even the smallest sin. The lawn bird made a scale that was capable of weighing any sin to maintain the peace of the forest. It was this good at being a judge that its eyes, that seemed to be burning like stars in the night sky, were capable of seeing their sins. But after hearing the prophecy of the stranger, the bird gave its eyes to the big bird in order to protect the forest, and has thus bandaged its eyes and head. It was also explained that its feathers were also gleaming, but due to the time spent in the Black Forest, they turned dark, and after the worries of the creatures of the forest, its scale, that could weigh even the tiniest of sin, would make it unbalanced and unjust, with the result of always being that the guilty hang themselves. Until the events of the Apoc Bird, that is. You know, out of all 3 birds, this one is definitely the most important one by far, especially considering the fact that it most likely represents the head itself. The head that judge all, and make sure that everyone in the city will behave and follow their laws. Which, I guess we can start talking about that. You know, before getting started on this video, I got a comment on a post which says about my interest in those abnormalities. And the comment was essentially saying that all 3 birds represent the 3 big corporations of the city, which was obvious to me, but the last part of the comment is what interests me. Together, they form an unjust system that doesn't protect the weak nor control the strongest, just punishes everyone who breaks certain rules. You see, the reason why I'm saying this here now is because I'm not going to be talking about Apoc Bird in general, but rather what it represents, the unjust system that both the head and the 3 birds have introduced to their respective locations. Now, currently, the city is essentially a fucked up place to live in. If you live in the back streets, the only thing that you can think of is survival, by connecting to those that are stronger than you, or equal to each other in order to survive. And a similar thing happens if you're a feather of a wing. You just can't survive without being lucky in the city, or being connected. And a similar thing happens in the Black Forest as well. Although we are never told exactly what the creatures of the Black Forest did when the 3 birds were out there protecting, we are told that they didn't like the system as well. They always fought each other daily and were complaining again and again, and with very few visitors because of what the 3 birds are doing, which is a similar thing that is happening within the city as well, with barely anyone coming into the city. Those in the outskirts are considered kicked out and have difficulty coming into the city in the first place. The same way with those outside the forest. Everything is fucked because of that system. A system that doesn't want to protect its citizens and for everyone to have fun, but to punish those that break the rules, with a perspective that they are protecting those that are fine and happy. But where did it start? Well, for the 3 birds it was, according to the Justicia ego suit, it began with small hope. The desire for peace now only exists in fairy tales. Peace, huh? Peace is also mentioned in the weapon as well, saying, like its previous form, it seeks to bring peace. And again, peace is mentioned in the Twilight ego weapon as well, saying, the wielder of this armament may also bring peace as they did. So, for the 3 birds, I guess it started as a want for peace and for the forest to be safe more than anyone else. That way, creatures from the outside could visit and have fun. You know, all of that makes me think, do the 3 birds even know what they are doing? Do the 3 birds even know that what they are doing is wrong and violent? Now, maybe not for the big bird. After all, it is the one that thought to kill the creatures before the beast was a good idea. Hell, the ego even says that it's prideful of that fact. And probably the same for small bird as well, since all it wanted was to enact justice to those that are evil. It is one of the more simpler birds to understand after all. But I think lawn bird understands that what it's doing is inherently evil, some may say. According to the Justitia ego, both the weapon and the suit, it says that the employee who extracted this ego weapon or suit was the most just person in the company. Do not try to take off the bandage, it wants to hide the sad memories of the past. Lawn bird probably knows that what they are doing is evil, at least from its perspective, but he's also trying to avoid it. He intentionally blinded himself to make sure that it doesn't want to face the consequences of his actions. It's kinda sad and disappointing if you really think about it, huh? No wonder that Justitia looks like Twilight, and no wonder the Judgement bird represents the head, which also makes you wonder, is the person who made the head think that as well? I mean, if, and I really do mean if, let's just say that the heads, eyes, and claws founders were given a prediction of chaos, even more so than the outskirts itself. Because, again, if the city doesn't exist, then it would only be the outskirts, filled to the brim with monsters. And eventually, the head's founder made a wish to the star for peace and eventually made the city to protect the people. But as time went on for the prediction to come, the city degraded itself into becoming the shithole it is now because the head never protected its denizens and only kicked out those that are inherently not human and turned it into a taboo for an age of humanity or something like that. Man, this is getting a bit serious, huh? Anyways, good to be back talking about abnormalities again. Hell yeah. So, short outro as always. Subscribe. Bye.